Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, we have a fantastic guest for you today. She runs the company that makes a vehicle that we talk about, I think, a fair amount.
Lynn Calder, the CEO of INEOS, and we've been talking about INEOS because I had one a few weeks ago and really enjoyed it. Thought it was great, thought it was interesting, fascinating, a great value for money. And Lynn's awesome.
Yeah.
I was really happy to meet her and talk to her. She needs to be a regular.
Yeah, she's
cool.
Really cool, and it was a great conversation. The vehicle obviously is one that for car people, I think everyone knows about it because everyone loved the old Defender. And when Land Rover stopped making the old Defender, it was pretty disappointing to the world of automotive enthusiasts, right?
You could say that, yeah. And it seemed like, why would they destroyed something that everyone wants, which is a long heritage, wrought over time on this iconic shape that everyone recognizes.
Yes. And fortunately, it wasn't just, penniless internet auto fanboys. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was also a billionaire at a pub in one of the most expensive places on the planet, Belgravia.
But that's kind of what it takes, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, it does take a billionaire.
Hey, let's get straight to the interview, and then afterwards we have a couple of things to cover.
Such great timing because I just drove the Fieldmaster, and it was my first experience with your product after hearing about it for years and seeing them driving around, especially Beverly Hills, but all over LA. And I have to say, I was really pleasantly surprised. So, of course, Matt has been talking about INEOS as well. So it's really nice to have you. What I'm trying to say is it's really nice to have you here with us, Lynn. And the product is really fascinating to me. And I had such a nice time testing it. And this is not a question, really. I guess it's just more of an intro. Maybe Matt jumps in with a question, but that kind of explains why we're so eager to talk to you. Because to me, this is a fascinating company and a fascinating story. And I'm just also fascinated to hear about your life and your background. And maybe this is the question. You come from more of a petrochemical background, right? Am I getting that right? Can you just sort of walk us through, how did you end up leading this really amazing, interesting company?
Yeah, it is a great place to start, and thanks so much to you both for having me on. It's always great to talk about the Grenadier, but yeah, let's spend a minute on me. 20 years in energy, actually, a few years in petrochemicals, which is all kind of linked. You just move a little bit down the chain. Joined INEOS 9 years ago from private equity, and 3 years ago got the kind of question, which is, can you go and help out a little bit in automotive? Because it's been a project, right? It's been about developing and building a car. It's not been about a business. But now it needs to be about a business. We're ready to produce it. We're ready to take it to the market globally. And can you go in and take a look and see what we need to do and help us out a little bit? And 2 months later, it was like, you just need to give up whatever you were doing before, which was running a chemicals business, and just do this full time because we need to get this up and running. So what a gig! I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world to get such a bizarre, random, and wonderful opportunity.
Moving into an automotive space when you have not worked in that space, to me, is actually, I would consider that an asset. I'm curious how you dealt with that, because the automotive world can also be rather insular and really sort of tightly closed off if they don't think you have the, quote, right credentials, whatever that even means, to be working in cars. Did you face any of that? And I think it's a huge asset to come from an outside sector. Did you find that as well?
I think it is an asset. I think moving any sector, I mean, energy to chemicals, as I say, is not such a big step, but it's still a move. It's still people using acronyms that you haven't heard before. Where I think it is absolutely an asset is that you ask all the dumb questions, right? And a lot of the answers to the dumb questions are, you dumbass, this is the answer, and they're right. But a lot of the questions are, well, this is, or the answers are, it's just why we've always done it this way. This is how we do it around here. And actually, when you really scratch below the surface again and again and again, and you keep asking, and people have to really delve into why, then you quite often get oh, actually, we can do this differently. And because I might be new to the sector, but of course INEOS is as well, and we've kind of got freedom, therefore, to not reinvent the wheel when we don't need to and learn from the best, but also say, heck, we don't need to do it like that. We can do it our way. We can go a more agile way, or we can go a more, out there, let's just sort of rip up the rule book, which we kind of like doing, let's face it, and do it our way. And so it's kind of, I'm just really fortunate to work for a company like this. I don't think I'll be joining, any other large OEM anytime soon, but for INEOS, it works.
So I want to just introduce the vehicle, because not everybody knows. Not everybody's hanging out in Beverly Hills all the time, right? This was Jim Ratcliffe is a British billionaire, right? Who owns INEOS, which is, a chemicals company, right? And when Land Rover stopped making the Defender, which was almost 10 years ago now, I guess he had this idea at the Grenadier, which is an amazing little pub in Belgravia, to make his own version. I guess he had approached Land Rover and said, like, can I have the plans or the copyright or whatever, trademark? And they said, forget it. So he made his own version. And I think it's so cool. I think we've all dreamt about, like, making our own vehicle, but we don't have the means. And this guy does, so he just did it. And how long did it take from that pint at the Grenadier to the first one rolling off the line? Like, how long has this project been underway?
So from standing start, and it was an absolute standing start, to the first production vehicle off the line of quite a large state-of-the-art factory in France was 5 years. And we're now 8 years or 7.5 years in, really, and 2.5 years worth of selling now 50 countries. So it's a great intro, Matt, but it's not just having the means, it's having the kind of the kahunas to do it, right? It's really, it's such a bold thing to do. And it's bold because it's really, there's a reason why people don't start automotive companies generally.
Yeah, for sure.
They're hard.
And also he had to, I guess there must have been some legal action, right? Because it doesn't look exactly like a Defender, but to most people, it does. I mean, it's the same shape. It's the same idea. It has the same kind of, to some extent, off-road manners, right? So how did you pull that off?
Well, look, I think we don't shy away from the fact there was an inspiration here. The whole idea, as you said at the beginning, Matt, was, there's a gap in the market now because they've left. And, the original conversation was with them. We didn't then set out to just sort of go and build our version of it. I mean, 4x4 is a boxy shape so that you can put, a wheel at each corner and have maximum visibility. So, a G-Wagon looks kind of similar, and a Land Rover, an old Land Rover Defender looks quite similar, because these are hardcore, original 4x4s to do the job. And I think that, the idea was then to fill that gap that we believe exists because everyone else has left the space, to go more kind of crossover into like a lifestyle brand, which is working really well for them, by the way, I think. So I think that, the car is actually quite different. I think the sentiment, the feel of the car is quite different. Of course, it's a modern, refined version as well. So it's got a lot of modern comforts compared to some of the older 4x4s. That said, we did find ourselves embroiled in a legal battle or two, and we navigated those by winning them. So
I heard that slight dig at the G-Class, at the G-Wagon. We love that vehicle, but what do you think it is that sets apart the Grenadier from, a G-Wagon, or even a Jeep, Wrangler, or a Bronco? Like, what makes this the ultimate off-road or ultimate kind of 4x4 vehicle?
I think the G-Wagon's a great vehicle, by the way. It absolutely wasn't a dig. And I think that it's just a recognition that where the market has gone for those kind of vehicles that were at their core, at their origin, a kind of extreme 4x4, the market has taken them in a direction which is most people are not taking them off-road. Right. So the idea was to go back to first principles. So, it's the ladder frame. It's the diff locks, it's the ground clearance, it's the wheel articulation, it's all of the things, the approach and the departure angles, it's the extreme thought that's gone into every aspect of what this car should be capable of doing. And in my opinion, and our chief engineer really gets annoyed with me when I say this, but it's way over engineered for anything that anyone's actually going to do with it. So
love that. That's lacking, I think, from the market in general, no matter what kind of car you're looking for.
Yeah, it's blatantly over-engineered, which makes the commercial job a little more difficult. But he corrects me every time and says it's over-spec'd, Lynn, not over-engineered. So look, I mean, I don't think I think there are other very capable cars in the market, and there is literally no doubt that all of the vehicles we're mentioning right now, whether it's Jeep, G-Wagon, Land Rover, are all extremely capable off-roaders. It's just that we've kind of filled a space, which is this is what the car is for. This is the purpose, and therefore everything starts with that.
I remember when I was driving the Fieldmaster and doing the review, I talked to a lot of my friends who are really big off-roaders, and there are two questions for me that I actually spoke with Gregor about, but I'd love to hear your part too, is would they ever put a manual in? And would they ever do a diesel engine? And that, speaking about what your customers want and overspecking the vehicles, Matt and I talk about this all the time. We talk about how everyone says they want a manual, but the take rate is always really low. What's the conversation for you guys at INEOS about doing a manual, doing a diesel engine? And on top of that, are you feeling pressure around emissions regulations to try to comply? What is that whole conversation like for you guys?
Yeah, okay, so let's I was going to start with the easy one, which is powertrain first, but given the emissions question, I'll come back to it. So manual, I mean, sure, it's an automatic transmission, 8-speed ZF. It's excellent with the BMW engine that we've put in the car. And most people, despite everything I've just said about the purpose of the vehicle, are driving it more on road than off, and therefore the manual, the automatic transmission works really well. You can sort of nudge it into manual, and actually where I use the car in manual mode is normally on like really steep descents, because we have an automatic descent control mode, which I don't feel the need to use if I can just flick it into first gear. So, there's the opportunity to do that when you're off-roading. It's not quite as neat as having paddles on the steering wheel, but it kind of works for me, and that's how I would use it. So as a result of that, we're not planning to kind of build like a pure manual car. I think it's got enough optionality in it. We do have a diesel engine. It's just not available in the US.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, and actually, I mean, that's just because, there isn't that much call for diesel vehicles in the US. There'll be, a cohort of extremely, dedicated off-roaders that would love a diesel, and, can probably import one because we have them. Weirdly, our market has been completely skewed now. If you look at our diesel versus gas engines, because before we launched in the US, we were probably about 70% diesel. But with the US coming onto the books, we're probably about 50-50 now, diesel and gas worldwide. And then emissions, I mean, gosh, it's such a topic, much, much more so in Europe than I think it is in the US. And not only are we under pressure to kind of bring new powertrains to market that are not really that well equipped for a really serious off-roader, because an electric Grenadier is just not going to work. The Grenadier is 2.7 tons. Like we're not gonna fit a battery in this car, and for it to be used off-road, it's not going to work.
you had toyed around and then decided,
Yeah.
we're going to pivot,
Um,
which,
I'm here to
yeah.
tell you that the electric G-Wagon works. I just had one for a week and it was pretty amazing. In fact, I used to have a gas G-Wagon and I think electric works even better for that platform. So
No, and it's really cool. It's just that we would have to change our platform, Matt, because the way that we have kind of engineered the car, the ladder frame, the weight of it, you can't then put a battery in it. So the G-Wagon is on a completely different platform. And that's what we would have to do as well. So what we actually launched instead of an electric Grenadier was a new model called the Fusilier, which is on a skateboard platform rather than a ladder frame. So the entire, the entire frame of the car is light enough to withstand a pretty serious battery to allow you to be able to do pretty serious off-roading. So that's the solution. It's just that we can't really reverse engineer the Grenadier to be an electric version. No doubt you can have a really solid off-road electric car. And that's what we aim to do with the Fusilier.
I respect that. Hey, how do you deal with the dealership issue? Because all of your competitors, even Land Rover, has dealers, regardless of how often people complain about them. Did you have to start a new dealership network? I mean, here in the U.S., in Europe, in Asia, that seems like almost as big an undertaking as developing a car.
Oh, I'm so glad you recognize that, Matt, because I think, the car is the hard bit, but you're right, getting it out to market we're in 50 countries now. That's, getting on for 300 retail locations and building that in 2.5 years has been really challenging as well. It's worked really particularly well in the US, though, I would say, because we've got a really, really strong dealer franchise model in the US that I know we've kind of as car manufacturers tried to pick apart at various times over the last 10 years to see if we can be more direct to consumer. But we did that in one or two of our other markets. It doesn't work very well. And I think that what we have in the US now is a network of extremely strong, passionate, supportive dealers who are out there, kind of scrapping with us to build this brand. So it's worked really well.
I have to say this last weekend, I was just out in Pasadena, at the Rose Bowl and drove past Rusnak.
Resnac, yeah.
Yeah, which has such a good reputation in California, and your guys' section of that dealership looked fabulous. And I mean, there were lots of rigs out there. It looked really great, and I think Rusnak is the dealer that did the press loan for me too. So, for what it's worth, that was a really positive experience. It was nice to see and nice to experience that.
And that's really great to hear, Hannah, because that's exactly what we need is people getting the best experience possible. This is all about the customer. People are spending their hard-earned cash on a new car, not just a new car, but a new concept of a car and a new company that hasn't done this before. Although we've worked with a massive amount of the best experts in the business, so we believe that we've delivered a really strong vehicle. But there's a big leap of faith, and we need to work with the best of the best that are really putting the customer at the heart of that. And so I think we built a lot of the network through relationships in a way with people like Brian from Rusnak, which is okay. When we get them all in a room together, I think they look around the room and say, oh yeah, they respect one another because they're the kind of people that really know what they're doing, that have been in the business a long time, but mainly put the customer first. And they've taken a leap of faith with us as well.
Is there a single point of hesitancy that you seem to get from consumers who might be interested in buying a Grenadier? But, is there one specific thing that is really a stumbling block for them that you guys are working to overcome?
Yeah, I think one of the main ones, and this is global, but certainly true in the US as well, because it's such a vast country, is that, we'll round out this year with about 40 retail locations in North America. So that's including a couple in Canada as well. That's not exactly, carpet bombing a vast country with lots of service locations, right? So I think people will travel to buy a car, but they don't want to travel to service a car. So I think that providing like a really solid after sales capability for people Now, we're not going to probably manage, given our size and given our age, we're probably not going to manage to achieve that across the United States. So what we really focus then on is really servicing the people around the areas where there's critical mass of people that have bought Grenadiers. And I think that's something that we've got to really focus on, is giving people the comfort that they're going to be able to get their car serviced at minimal inconvenience.
I realized after the fact that I left out Africa when I said your dealership networks in the US and Europe and Asia. But Africa must be like the spiritual home of the Grenadier, right? Because it's like an overlanding vehicle. It's perfect for safaris. What are, you think, the coolest use case scenarios that you've heard of so far for your new car? I mean, have you got a safari operator that ordered 20 Grenadiers, or do you have people using them for science experiments at the North Pole, or is there something awesome that you've seen?
Yeah, we have. We've seen a few, and Africa is a great place to talk about, because you're right, and you're so spot on. Actually, it is the spiritual home, because I think although the idea was in the pub, the Grenadier pub, it was really born out of doing lots and lots of adventurous travel in Africa. You know, Jim loves to go to places that are really untouched and really adventurous, and you need the tool to get you there and get you out again. Particularly in some, quite dangerous places with a lot of the animals and things that are roaming around some of the places he likes to spend time in Africa. Yeah, I guess the most fun aspect of that is we do actually have a safari game viewer Grenadier, which is quite exciting. So, we went and built one with a modifier in Botswana to see what it would look like, to see if Jim liked it. It was his birthday at the time, and he liked it so much we bought the modifier, and we're now producing game viewers. So yeah, coming to a safari camp near you.
That's awesome.
Lynn, you mentioned importing earlier. I'm just curious, how are you guys doing with the tariff situation? Are you seeing that already impacting buyers in the US? How are you feeling about all that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a blow, because we were just really gearing up. We were just over 1 year selling in the US. Biggest market. Aiming for significant growth this year. 40% growth this year, completely achievable given that we're adding about 14 sales points. This is completely achievable, and it just kind of arrested us in our steps for about 5 minutes of going, my God, what do we do now? It's 25% on top of a 2.5% tariff. There's no doubt that that's not anything like what we expected to happen or wanted to happen. We knew there would be tariff movement, but we expected the Europeans, because we manufacture in France, we're coming from Europe, we expected the Europeans to negotiate. And they didn't. And all of a sudden, the worst case scenario happened, not just on cars, but on parts. And for us as well, we have a quartermaster pickup truck. I'm not sure if you've seen that yet, which is perfect for the US market. And because it's a pickup truck and a light commercial vehicle, it also attracts chicken tax. So actually, to import now,
so chicken tax is like 25%, right?
Yeah, so it's now 50.
On top, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's in addition to.
So 50% for this fantastic car that's really built for the US market. And we just don't really understand why Europe is not motivated to negotiate away an inequity, because, all the US government was saying was there's an inequity. You're paying 2.5% to get into my country. I'm paying 10% to get into yours. Do something about it. And that seems like a really straightforward business negotiation to me. So very frustrating, but are we seeing a massive impact? I mean, we put our prices up by 5%, so 25% increase in cost, but we put our price up by 5%, which means, a mixture of ourselves and our retailers are kind of taking the pain to kind of just try and keep demand up for such a nascent early brand that isn't really very well known yet. And we want to just give buyers, people who are sitting on the fence, the comfort to say it's still a heck of a lot of car for the money. It's a good price for the vehicle, and we'll support the extra tariffs for now, until hopefully there's a negotiation. And if not, we'll continue to support it. This is a sustainable plan, which says, this is what you'll pay for a Grenadier now and at the end of the year as well.
So you build the I guess truck is a word I want to use. Is that a fair word to use for because it's
a great word.
Yeah. So you build the truck in France, right? Didn't you buy a factory in France? Tell us about that production facility, why you chose it, and how it's working.
Yeah, so we bought a former Mercedes plant in France about 5 years ago now, actually. So we've had it for quite some time. And it's one of the really kind of best parts of our story in a way. It's one of the luckier parts of our story, because I think if we'd had to build a factory at the same time as building a car, we might still be doing that rather than talking about tariffs and things. So yeah, it was one of the best things that happened, really. And Mercedes had made a number of very large scale investments in that plant, including in a new state of the art body shop, paint shop, but had kind of decided to rationalize their production to lots of other places across the world, because of course they have many, many factories. And we got the opportunity to take it on and run with it, really, with that investment already made. So it was a no-brainer, and got us up and running really quickly. And we are very, very grateful for that opportunity.
I'm just curious, do you ever get a sense about whether Jim would bring on additional investors into the company? Is he giving you guidance about how much he wants to continue investing versus bringing others to lighten the load just on him?
Yeah, it's a great question, Hannah, and a really insightful one at a time when the industry is challenging, right? On almost every metric. We talked about emissions earlier. That's adding loads of cost in Europe in particular, where we manufacture. So, it's a really tricky time, but there's no doubt that, Jim's commitment to the business is unwavering. He is he's the kind of beginning of all of this business. He seeded it. It's his idea. And what we've done to kind of take that idea and run with it and make it a global business that is, pretty close after a very short time to washing its face. There's no doubt that his support is absolutely unwavering. But I'll also say, I don't think you ever say never in any situation, right? Because what you need in automotive is scale, and we've got ambitions way beyond what we're doing today, way beyond. This is just the start for us. We've got probably 3 or 4 other models in mind. The Fusilier being one that we're kind of quite far through developing. But I'd say that if it's the right thing to do at the right time, we would never say never.
That brings up one more question I have for you, and it's about what you're talking about, your ambitions. I have to say, I was so pleasantly surprised at the price point of the Fieldmaster. We've seen so many resto mods. Obviously, this is not a resto mod, but so many, off-roading vehicles, resto mods that are 6 figures. And the Fieldmaster that I drove was around 80, a little over 80. How important is it for you guys to stay around that price point? Is that a big part of the plan and the structure of the company? Or will you be expanding, going up, going down? What's that conversation like?
So I think with the Grenadier, we think the price point's right. I said this earlier, like I do think it's a lot of car for the money, because I know how much engineering is in this car. And the componentry, like it's the best of components. And there's the things you can, see and touch, like, if you pop the hood and you see it's BMW engine, but it's also, the control units like Bosch, Continental, our Recaro seat, our Brembo brakes. These are all brand names that are the componentry that's gone into the car. ZF transmission. I'd already called them out, Matt. I thought
I know, but they're the best transmissions in the world. So I felt like it was mentioned again. I wonder about the steering specifically. Can I ask about that, Lynn? Because while I haven't driven it, I guess I'd love to hear Hannah's thoughts. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos about the Grenadier because I am kind of obsessed with this vehicle and have been for a few years. The one thing that everyone calls out is that it's not your typical kind of self-centering steering. And that's because of the off-road, pedigree of the engineering. Would you ever change that? Or is that, you think, like a specific piece of the vehicle's character that you want?
Yeah, I think for the Grenadier in particular, and I completely understand the point. I obviously drive one. I read your review, Hannah, so I kind of know what your thoughts were, and you know really well described it as well as to why it is the way it is. And when you do a lot of off-roading, you really feel why, because that stability when you're doing some pretty difficult off-roading, you know, you feel like immediately you know why it is the way it is. But on the road, that can feel, you know, a bit jarring, particularly, I would say, in a world where modern cars aren't like that. Whereas if you go back 10, 15 years, you know, it was very normal to drive cars that felt like that. So I get in a Grenadier on the road and, you know, within 5 minutes, it wasn't really bothering me at all because I kind of remembered what it was like to drive slightly older cars. And I kind of love it as well because it, you know, talk about it sort of putting the drive back into driving. You know, I don't need to kind of have I don't need to have a fingertip, you know, on the steering wheel. I kind of like feeling the robustness of the vehicle, so it doesn't bother me at all. But to answer your question, I think, you know, there are probably optimizations we'll make to the Grenadier because we're listening all the time and we want to make sure that we make it the best vehicle it can be. And the way that you best do that is listen to your customers. And I think that there are optimizations, but there will be there will be tweaks. We're not going to change the steering system. But then when we were, you know, starting the development of the Fusilier, which doesn't need to be our most off-road capable vehicle, because we have that in the Grenadier, that will be a rack and pinion system because that will be a much more of an urban vehicle that you can take off-road rather than an off-road vehicle that you can take into the city, which I think is kind of what the Grenadier is.
I can't wait to drive this vehicle. Christ, I want to drive it.
Oh,
we'll get you in one, Matt.
Yeah. Like, yes, the steering is noticeable, but it's not a problem. It's just different. And I totally agree that, you know, you get used to it really quickly. And if you want something that is going to go canyon carving, you just get a different vehicle. You know, this is not that. We talk all the time about the right tool for the job. And, you know, to me, at least, I like how it has a personality that, you know, it's alive. I really like that. I'm Matt and I talk all the time about how we're so tired of driving appliances around. So
yeah, I feel like it must be a defining characteristic because that's what people used to say about the old G-Wagon. And now that they've made it obviously a road driving car. And the same is true of the Bronco. It's more for Starbucks. You know, I mean, I'm sure you can take it off road as well, but the idea is they had to make it drivable for soccer moms too. I hope that's not too.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd say that a lot of our clientele is that, you know, where you kind of joked at the beginning, Matt, about seeing lots, you know, riding around Beverly Hills. You know, that is the market as well, because it's also just something different, right? It's a cool looking car. It's different. It stands out. And people enjoy its character.
Yeah,
I guess because it's got quite a lot of character inside as well. We talk a lot about this vehicle, but the interior has got quite a lot of character. It's quite, you know, different, designed by us to kind of really feel like you're in a different environment, and that's got a lot of allure as well as just the off-road characteristics.
I have a neighbor in Scarsdale, New York, who has one, and I stopped to talk to him about it. He said everybody stops to talk to him about it, and obviously we wouldn't if he just had a Jeep. So, you know, that's definitely a huge bonus, having something that other people don't necessarily have. Having said that, I'm sure you want to sell more. How many are you expecting to sell this year, or do you have a target for now or 5 years from now? What are you thinking in terms of volume?
Yeah, so I'm thinking, I mean, we are aiming for, I think our target this year is 11,000, which again, you know, I mean, we did about 8 last year from a standing start.
Global sales or North America?
No, North America.
Okay.
What's a global?
So, you know,
what are your global sales?
So we've got 25,000 Grenadiers on the road globally at the moment, and you know, seeking to grow quite quickly now because we've got quite a lot of global coverage now, right? So for the first year, we were just kind of sort of eking into and getting started up into kind of I'd say early markets like the UK and Germany and Australia. Whereas, now we're kind of really expanding. And the US has been a huge part of that. So the growth last year from the US alone was really, really substantial for us. And I think that, as we went into this year, it was all then about continued growth. So adding quite a lot of sales points, adding quite a lot of, filling in some of the white gaps, big, metropolis white gaps on the map that is going to really help us grow. And then, the final aspect of that, of course, is just awareness. I think almost nobody has heard of us. We've still got such a big job to do to tell our kind of really quite unique backstory and get people into the driving seat of this car, because it is I don't think there's anything like it on the market, which means you get in, and as you say, Hannah, for lots of people just say this won't suit my life. We don't need to sell, 1 million of them a year. That's not a problem. But for the people that really get it and they get in the driver's seat, they just kind of it kind of brings out your inner child or something. You've got this kind of this toy that you're playing with that's got lots of fun capability and fun things you can do with it. And I kind of think it brings us all back to being like a kid again. And I think for us to grow, just getting more people to experience that
people will know now, Lynn, now that you're on the Hot Pursuit podcast. We have dozens of listeners. So
we have dozens of listeners.
But also Hannah wrote about it in Hot Pursuit, and I asked my buddy Tim, he asked me what the podcast was on today, and I said the INEOS Grenadier, and he said, "Oh, they sponsor a Tour de France team." So what do you do to get the message out? Are you plopping down thousands of pounds on advertising, or is it are you sponsoring extreme sports teams, or does Jim put it on the side of a hot air balloon, or what do you do?
That's a great question.
I would like that.
Yeah, I'll note down some of your ideas there, Matt. It sounds great. We're not going to go down the route of, in sort of typical INEOS style, we're not going to go down the route of, I suppose, standard OEM of just spend, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on advertising, because we won't cut through. I think we've got to do it differently. We've got to kind of find a way to punch above our weight, and we'll never make any money. And we're here to do that, right? This is not just about a nice story and a great car. We're here to make a commercial success of this. So our ideas are much more about how do we punch above our weight, right? So that's about our tone of voice. It's about getting out there, telling the story, being a little bit punchy sometimes. We recently did an ad campaign with Defender, right, where we kind of sort of really took on head on the fact that there's been legal disputes, and really thought through that campaign also, though, to highlight the differences between our two vehicles, the ones that are on the road today, not that we're on the road 20 years ago. So trying to have a bit of fun with it, maybe, is the answer to that question.
Lynn, I think you went to school in Aberdeen, right? Scotland?
I did, yes.
Did you grow up in Aberdeen as well, or close by?
So I was born near Edinburgh, in the county next to Edinburgh, moved to Aberdeenshire when I was 10, to this tiny, tiny little town of, 4,000 people. And grew up there until I went to school. So great memories of both places. Love Scotland, still get home as often as I can. But it's been a long time since I've lived there. I don't miss the weather.
Well, I bet. The reason I ask is because I'm actually in Las Vegas right now with my niece, who lives she's Scottish. She lives in Aberdeen. And, it's an oil town in a way. I mean, the oil industry is huge there, of course, as you know. I'm just curious if you have any words of wisdom for kids, teenagers who are from Aberdeen that, may be making their way out into the world. Any words of wisdom?
Oh, I love that, Hannah. Absolutely love that question. And I love that you're with your Scottish niece from Aberdeen. That's incredible. It's a pretty small part of Scotland, but you're right. It's actually got such a rich industrial past. And I think that certainly used to give massive opportunity to get into an industry that took you around the world, which is exactly what I did. And I think that's probably slightly changed days today because, fossil fuels are a more difficult proposition from an industry perspective, and our government at the moment doesn't particularly want them anymore. So Aberdeen is definitely not the place that it was. But I think that your niece has got the world at her feet, and it is her oyster, whatever she wants to do. And I think we live in a world today where the opportunities are endless in a way. And if I can, get out of Aberdeen and come and run a car company, then there's hope for everyone.
Well, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, you've done very well. So I think maybe Hannah, you can connect them, and they can and she can get some advice from Lynn. Hey, I want to finally ask about the pub. I feel like the vehicle has made the pub even more famous. There's only room for like 4 or 5 people in that pub. I've been to it a few times off the Grosvenor Crescent there in Belgravia. Have you been in there? I mean, it's such a cool little pub, and it's so fun that it inspired the name of this rugged, globally sold off-road vehicle.
Yeah, and it's actually added to the story more than ever now because 2 years ago we bought the pub, Matt. So,
I did not know that.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Such an integral part of the story, right? It's really, it's folklore for us now because it really is the start of something that's become very big and impactful and important in our lives. So yeah, I'm in the Grenadier reasonably often. Tony, the landlord, is wonderful. We'll have a chat to you, and pour you a really decent pint. So it's a fabulous little pub. But yeah, we kind of decided that it's part of our story, and we should make sure that it stays the way it is.
Do you have?
How often is Jim in the pub these days?
I mean, Jim is a very busy man, as you can imagine, Hannah. And I think when he's in London, he loves to grab a drink in the Grenadier. But yeah, he's pretty busy. I couldn't possibly know how often he's in the Grenadier.
But do you have Grenadier owners from all over Europe like making a pilgrimage to the pub? Do you ever see the other vehicles pulled up outside there?
Yes, and quite often as well, if because the whole team spends time in there as well, right? And we're all like very good at running around with branded kit on that's got, and quite a lot of our customers do as well. So I've had people come up to me in the pub that have kind of sort of either recognized me or recognized because I've been wearing an INEOS Automotive piece of kit, and they've come over to say hello and who are you, because I'm a Grenadier owner. So yeah, I think it has become a bit of a pilgrimage, and that's a lovely part of the story.
So cool.
I love that. Thank you for taking the time, Lynn. It's really great to talk with you. We hope you come back and talk to us more.
Yes.
I really appreciate the opportunity as well, guys. Love the fact that you have been driving the car, Hannah, and we must get you in one, Matt.
I'm looking forward to it. I know a guy who has one, so I'm going to hopefully get a chance soon. By the way, if you ever get into New York, or next time you're in New York, I'd love to have you on my television show.
Well, look, that would be fab. I'm in New York fairly recently, but I'll tell you what I'll do, Matt. I'll turn up with a lone Grenadier for you so that you can get one. You don't need to borrow one from your mate.
Thanks. Thanks so much.
Big fan. Love that she's from Scotland because, like I said, I've literally been around a young Scottish lass for the past week, and they're just delightful.
I also feel like it's the perfect place for this vehicle. I mean, I know I said Africa is a spiritual home, but think about like Skyfall, right?
I know.
This is a truck that needs to be driven across the Highlands.
The Scottish Highlands, wearing a kilt.
Yes.
And like eating haggis and playing bagpipes all at the same time.
I should wear a kilt more often. Does Magnus ever wear a kilt?
Well, no, he's not Scottish. There's I've been getting a real download on the history of Scotland and England. And no, he does not wear a kilt. But apparently a lot of the young kids do in Scotland, like for school dances and for formals, even like the young boys, like teenage boys, will wear a kilt.
Yeah, I would wear a kilt on a regular basis if I were Scottish.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're not Scottish, it's tough to pull it off.
Correct.
Just a casual kilt.
Yeah, a casual kilt. That's a hard line to walk, but yeah.
So you're in Vegas with Magnus.
So with Magnus and my mother-in-law and my niece. We just took a little mini vacation here. My niece has never been, so she's visiting. And also, did I tell you that we just bought a new Rolls-Royce
Yes.
for cheap?
Yes.
That's kind of exciting. It's a Silver Spur 72 two-tone, black and sort of a claret. They call it Regal Red, but it's more of a burgundy claret color.
So how many Rolls Royces do you guys own now?
This is number 4. They're, again, I have to say they are very, very inexpensive vehicles. But this is a fun one. And so far, I mean, each of the 3 previous has broken down on the first drive. This one did not break down on the first drive. So we're already ahead.
Yes.
You know, it's only up from here, only down from here, really. But
I was going to say they may be inexpensive to buy, but I imagine that the maintenance can get pretty pricey.
It depends. It depends. This one was a 2-owner car. The people who we bought it from had owned it for 27 years. So it has been cared for, not driven a lot. So it needs a real shakedown and sort of a run through by our mechanic, but cared for. So that's nice. And it appears to be full original. We haven't seen any sort of painting touch-ups or weird things like that. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Your white whale seems to be the Rolls-Royce Camargue, right? You've been after that, and you still didn't. On number 4, you still haven't gotten one.
No, the problem with the Camargue is they tend to be more expensive. That's the difference. They're a lot rarer than the Silver Shadow is actually the most produced Rolls-Royce up from the era. They made over 30,000 of them. So they are rather common. The Camargue is a lot rarer, and I don't want to quote a number a bit, but they're quite a bit rare. So yeah, more expensive. And so it's just harder to like pull the trigger on something that's a lot more money. You know.
Yes.
Well, you're getting something soon, right?
That's right. My wife went out of town for a couple weeks, so I bought a Harley Davidson Fat Bob.
As you do.
Yes. So I'm going to go down. I bought it in Fredericksburg, Virginia. They don't make the Fat Bob anymore. They stopped making it in 2023, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to get it sooner than later, so I could find a nice low mileage, but not too low mileage example. Mm-hmm. A one-owner bike. It's already had the air filter, the exhaust, and the tune. I'm not sure if it has a cam yet, but I want to put in my own cam, so I don't really care about that.
How old is it?
It is a 2023. It's a 2023
okay.
bike. So anyway, but the thing is, I have to be at a graduation. My nephew's graduating from Dickinson on Saturday and Sunday. So I'm going to fly out of here like right away and land in DC around 3:00. And then I guess I'll get there by 4 or 5, and then I'll drive straight back and hopefully get back around midnight to New York. Through the night. But
wow.
It's not so bad. Like that in itself isn't a problem. I'm supposed to run through thunderstorms a lot of the way, but I have a rain suit, so I'm pretty excited nonetheless. I'm pretty excited.
That's really cool. That'll be a fun adventure.
Absolutely. I also spent the week driving a Subaru Forester, which I didn't think was going to be terribly exciting. And guess what? It wasn't terribly exciting. However,
I didn't get any excited texts from you about the Forester.
No, there was nothing exciting about it. But I will say that the vehicle is sturdy. The boxer motor is not strong, but it's not annoying. And the price is low. So I had the most kitted out, absolute top of the line version with every option. And it was still only $43,000, which in today's world is really good for a full-size station wagon. So I went to the beach with it last weekend with my mom and my 2 daughters and a dog and all of our stuff. Everything fit. And then my mom, who's not bought a car that isn't a Volvo since the 1970s, has decided she's going to pick one up herself.
Oh.
So they made a sale.
Yeah, I mean, too bad you can't take a commission on that because you did the work.
It would be a very small commission, you know? I mean, I think it's pretty cool that they're still making, that some companies are still making relatively affordable vehicles. Like I interviewed the CEO of Slate on my television show, which is the new Amazon-backed electric pickup truck maker. They're going to sell those for like $25,000, I think, out of the box. And then you can make it into a 5-seater or a fastback or whatever you want. But, you know, there's the Ford has the Maverick. Like there are still some inexpensive vehicles. And I think that's really important. Otherwise, you don't get kids into the market. You don't get kids into the hobby.
Are we having the CEO of Slate come on the podcast?
We are. She's going to join us. Yes.
Great. Cool. And I love that mentality. I mean, I don't think things have to be expensive to be special. I never have. Those two things are two separate indicators.
No, and I always, you know, I always think people can buy used and should buy used stuff. And when I talk to Harley about, you know, the starter Harley, everyone complains that they don't have a bike that's, you know, $7,000 or $6,000. And they always say, we have a starter Harley. It's called the used Sportster. And that's the one that kids, you know, people inevitably, that's their first, if they get into it young, that's their first purchase. And not only is it good because they haven't wasted money if they don't like it or wasted too much money, and they're not buying too much bike for themselves. You know, it's got, I don't know, 60 horsepower. But I think it's really important that you have this low cost entry point for anything, for people to get into it. And that's true of cars as well, even though they're, of course, an appliance utility for most people.
Completely. And I also think it's a nice reference point for somewhere to go. You know, it's better to aspire to other things. You know, if you're coming in at a low price point, it makes you appreciate and understand the value of the thing. And then from there, you can go elsewhere if you want. But yeah.
What have you got coming up? What are you driving home, by the way? How did you get to Vegas?
Oh, great question. I will be driving home and did drive the 2025 EQS 450 sedan. And this was a bit of a, you know, I was a little bit worried that was it going to make it from LA to Vegas? It's electric. They said that the range, when I got the car, the range said 514 miles, which of course I don't believe. But actually it made it with over 110 miles to go left on the charge. So I was very happy. I'll be driving that back. The hotel, where I'm staying at the Wynn, which is a really great hotel. It's not Vegas, it's the Wynn, is the tagline, which I kind of like. But they've been really helpful charging it overnight. And yeah, so I'll be driving that back. Very comfortable. The AC works, which is very important.
Did you see the message we got from Don about his trip?
Yes, I did.
Where was he? He was like going to Bozeman, right? In a Tesla?
Yes.
Or somewhere like that. And he stayed
He
at a
wants
hotel.
you to drive to Ohio.
Well, yeah, he said I should. Go ahead. He said I should drive the G-Wagon to Ohio to see what it's like to go on a longer trip with an electric vehicle. And frankly, I've already had that experience in Germany. I drove the Audi e-tron from Berlin to Frankfurt, and it took 8 hours, a trip that takes me like 4.5 in a 911. But he said he drove to somewhere in Montana, and then the hotel didn't have any way to charge the car except for running an extension cord out of his room, like the regular 110 volt outlet. And so they couldn't go to Yellowstone because they didn't have enough electricity.
Oh, that is a huge bummer. And I have that unknown factor of, even if we make it to our destination, what will the charging options be at the destination, does create quite a lot of anxiety. So, you know, the only plug I can say is stay at the Wynn. The chargers work. It's totally flawless. No issue. You do have to sign a release form that lets the guys charge it for you. I haven't got the bill yet, so I don't know how much the charging will have cost. But yeah, that would be the hugest bummer. ever.
Missing out on Yellowstone because of your
everything.
Tesla. I have to think that's changed, even in Montana.
Let's hope.
I have to think it's changing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But
all right.
Anyway.
Well, I hope you have a great trip home. That's a very luxurious chariot. So enjoy that. I'm about to go turn in this Subaru for a Chevy Blazer EV. So I'm going to get back in the electric car.
You are on the EV train.
Yeah, I really am on the EV train. I got a lot coming up of electric vehicles.
No one can say that you don't drive EVs because you've been in EVs for months.
I'm finding them quite enjoyable for the most part. It's just those practical concerns that may hold me back. But obviously in the case of a Mercedes G580, nothing would hold me back beyond the price tag.
No.
All right, I'm Matt Miller.
I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.